Hi, I'm Mike Murillo with WTOP, and like the county executive, I'm also suffering from coronavirus. Use my voice as I continue on my road to recovery here with it. But I thank you for being here this evening and for having us here, WTOP, here this evening to take part in this. And you want me to jump right into the first question? All right, well, let's get right into affordable housing. According to the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments, by 2045 in its forecast, the county will have 200,000 more residents than it did in 2015, obviously. So we're seeing this increasing wave of residents that we need to plan for, yet we still see an affordable housing shortage here in the county. So you all talked about the need to address that. I'd like to give you the floor to give some specifics on how you will address this issue.
And why don't I should have done this before, my apologies. We'll start in alphabetical order and then we'll switch it up as we go along. So start it in the order that we did introductions. Thanks. Okay. So Mr. Blair.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Mike. So clearly it's a fundamental right that anyone that works in this county should be able to afford to live here. And by any metric, we're lacking affordable housing. You're probably familiar with the Thrive Plan. There's many things about that I particularly like, including their focus on affordable housing and the idea of the 15-minute community. In other words, how we should strive to make more of our housing walkable and accessible to quality transit, community gathering places, shopping, jobs, et cetera. But as you noted, we've got a steep hill to climb. Our planning department, I think by 2030 estimates that we needed 31,000 new units. And over the past decade, we've been averaging something like 2,600. In fact, last year, we just added, I think, about 1,500 new units. But regardless, we're falling woefully short of the new housing that we need. So clearly, we must aggressively pursue mixed income, mixed use developments, county investments in affordable housing products, such as maximizing housing construction where transit and transportation infrastructure exists. So examples would be like White Flint, Shady Grove, Forest Glen, and our future Purple Line stations. But that's not enough, right? We're not going to be able to build the amount of new housing we need if we don't grow the number of good paying jobs. Let me give you a specific example. Last year, planners talked to developers at White Flint, and that's often seen or talked about as one of the greatest opportunities and prospects for transit-oriented smart development. The zoning has been in place. They're ready to go. And when we asked them why they're not building, the answer was simple. The county's poor record on job growth. The people who build housing recognize that people want to live near their jobs. Most job growth in the region has occurred in DC and Northern Virginia, where developers are concentrating these new projects. So that's a significant factor why we have thousands of units that could be built under existing zoning that aren't happening. Right? Now, we're not here today to talk about economic development, but over the past decade, I've spoken to hundreds of community and business leaders and developers.
Sorry, our time just ran out. Apologies.
No worries. I apologize, Robert.
I know there's more. I know 2 minutes is hard, but promise we'll get some more time in there. Mr. Ellich, you're on mute.
Two minutes is really hard. But I will say this, look, Montgomery County's housing shortage and projected shortage, the first thing you need to know is the county's zoned for all the development that would accommodate all of this growth already. All of the future job projections are based on growth projections based on existing zoning. Our problem is not zoning. And David's dead right about White Flint. I read the same report and reached the same conclusion. The developer said, we're not building because we can't get enough rent. Not because we can't build, not because we can't pull permits. There are over 40,000 units that all a developer has to do today is pull a permit and they could build it. So the lack of housing has nothing to do with the inability to build it. It has to do with, as David said, I agree with, it's the incomes of the people here do not match the expectations of the developers in White Flint. It is not helped though, when everything you zone for is high rise, which guarantees the highest price per square foot in construction, which makes it incredibly difficult. Even I would agree with the developer when they tell us how hard it is to build affordable housing in a building that costs $500 a square foot to build. It doesn't work. It doesn't work very well. So we need strategies that look at who's coming here. The other thing which nobody wants to talk about, Everybody talks about the projection of 40,000 people coming here. Those 40,000 people actually had incomes attached to them. Almost 3/4 of those people would require subsidized housing. In Montgomery County, for every 100 market units you build, I get 15% affordable housing. If all I'm going to get is 1/4 of that, say 10,000 units that can pay market, then somehow the 10,000 units have to yield 30,000 units of affordable housing below market. That is very difficult. We are looking at ways of changing that. I'm about to announce, and our staff is putting this together, we're inviting all of the developers who are for-profit and nonprofit to a show where we're going to put on the table every county property, every parking lot, every garage, and every vacant lot we have, and say, make us proposals on building affordable housing here.
Thank
You were trying to tell me to stop.
I appreciate it. I know 2 minutes is tough, and you have the option for a minute rebuttal time, so don't forget that. Mr. Hucker.
Thanks, Will. As Mike said, Montgomery County unanimously declared a housing crisis not that long ago, but we act like we have a minor housing concern, not a crisis. Rents and home sales continue to increase, which pushes stable rental housing and the American dream of home ownership out of reach for way too many residents. So as county executive, I'll do everything I can to achieve our housing goals. I serve on the board of the Greater Washington Council of Governments. I voted for the spending for that report and then adopted the report and for the goals, and Councilmember Navarro and I brought them to the council where they were adopted unanimously. We made a commitment to all 24 governments in our region to declare that crisis and to set our goals, and we agreed to build 4,100 units of housing each year for 10 years in Montgomery County. Last year, we only created 1,200, not 4,100. We reached 29% of our goals. And we heard from the county executive minutes ago, a very fringe position. He's spoken out against the goals. And according to the Washington Post, he's the only major elected official in the region that opposes them. They ran a headline that right under the headline said, an unprecedented push to address the region's affordable housing crisis hit its first major snag, a stubborn, independent-minded county executive responsible for implementing policy in the area's second largest jurisdiction. And that stubbornness impacts the quality of life for our tenants. Just in my district, there are several projects the community is desperate to redevelop, and we've missed opportunities to do that in Silver Spring, White Oak, and Burtonsville just in the last few years. We have to make affordable housing a pressing priority. The leadership has to come from the executive branch. Under my presidency, the Affordable Housing Group, Rebuilding Together, gave the council an award for our innovative policy and unprecedented funding for affordable housing. And obviously, Hans deserves credit for that as well. But we did it without help from the current administration. I'll bring the urgency on this topic we need to the county executive's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hucker. Maybe we'll find a way to get you those 8 seconds back, but thank you. Mr. Reamer.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Hucker was right there about the history. There was a really important regional effort that came together, regional leaders from all over working through our regional planning organization to create a big vision for how this whole region could be more affordable. Fundamentally, it's about ensuring that our kids have a chance to live here and that they can find an affordable place and a good job. And one leader in this region fought against that plan to increase our housing supply, to avoid a California-style housing shortage. And that was County Executive Elrich. And we've heard from him tonight comments reinforcing those views, like the zoning is already there. That is the justification that he has used time and time again to oppose master plans in transit areas, to oppose housing, to retain housing moratoriums in transit areas. So what have I done to tackle this issue? A lot. As chair of the Housing Committee, I led the legislation to allow people to build basement apartments and backyard cottages. I helped remove the housing moratorium, which was affecting our Red Line corridor and places all over the county, holding back development and housing near Metro. I helped steer master plans, Veers Mill, Forest Glen, Montgomery Hills, Mark Station areas, Germantown, Ashton Village, Shady Grove, through the council process. I've crafted Thrive, a marvelous vision for the future of this county that's waiting for council action. County executive resisted or has called for stopping work on many of those plans and on Thrive. I created a $50 million social housing fund, a very innovative model to blend affordable housing and market rate housing based on the example from Vienna about how you can create and sustain affordable housing over time by mixing in market rate rents with guaranteed affordable units. We've created a $50 million fund that we expect will create nearly 1,000 units of housing a year. So as county executive, I'll build on these efforts and do more.
Thank you so much, Mr. Reamer. Now, I take it one or a few of you might want your minute for rebuttal time. And so I didn't know if that was a hand up, Mr. County Executive, or if you were.
Yeah.
Okay. Feel free, and I have the time here.
I don't know what Tom is talking about, but in White Oak, for example, White Oak, we moved the project forward at the White Oak Gateway. I solved the problem in Town Center. We're moving forward with the project in Burtonsville, assuming they come back with a lease for the grocer they've been looking for. So I've done everything I can, particularly getting personally involved to make sure those projects move forward and they didn't stay dead. As far as moratoriums go, you should tell people about why the moratoriums are there. They're there because we have inadequate transportation, we have overcrowded schools, and the council will not put in place the adequate fees to assure that when you do new development, you actually provide the schools and transportation you need. There was a reason for it, and the purpose of the moratorium was basically to force council action to provide the necessary infrastructure. What you've done is bypass the requirement to provide the community with infrastructure and leave us with potentially development that's not going to be supportable. We already see it in our overcrowded schools. Our school budget is not adequate to fund what the schools are requesting.
Thank you, Mr. Eldridge.
I should have gotten a minute for each of them.
I understand that the minute is even tougher than the 2 minutes. Would anyone else like rebuttal or response on this question? I see Mr. Reamer and then Mr. Hucker.
Thank you. The moratorium is the shining example of the kind of policy that has been dragging this county down for decades. It is the reason that business investment does not want to come into this county. And it is holding back progress and change in places like, or it was, in Grosvenor, White Flint, all up and down Rockville Pike. Well, those are if you want this area to change for the better, you've got to turn some of these suburban strip centers into bustling, vibrant places. Like that's essential for our economic vision of being a place that empty nesters and young families, young workers want to live. So we've got to think a little bit differently. What the council has done is right size the housing tax, the new housing tax, which is the development impact tax, so that it actually matches the impact on the schools, and to right size the charges on transportation. And we're getting revenue as a result, and we're funding our commitments. So it's, nothing is easy, but if you want change, you've got to really embrace the future.
Thank you, Mr. Reamer. Mr. Hucker.
I just want to catch Mark up a little. I think he's drawing on data from the 1980s and the 1990s. If you read the reports from our bipartisan experts at the planning board and the planning staff, they have made very clear families have changed. This is not a surprise to any of us. I grew up next to a family with 8 kids, another family with 5 on the other side. We don't see a whole lot of that anymore. The families that are moving to the county today, many of them are single adults, many don't have kids in the schools, and many don't use the roads as much as they did in the 80s and 90s. The reason we don't have enough money for our infrastructure is because we have a stagnant economy. We were last in the region in job growth, the only one losing jobs pre-COVID in this administration. And we need to juice our economy to bring back the dollars we need to build the infrastructure that the county needs. Thank you.